Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, I must thank the Bombay Psychiatric Association for having invited me. And actually, I was a little nervous. I said, what am I doing in a psychiatric association and what do I talk to them? And then I realized maybe I'll talk to them about my life and the lessons I learned and the reasons why, because then I'll give you all homework to then analyze and see what diseases I suffer. If there are counselors around, please find out what counseling I need and whatever help I need. So maybe it'll help me. I want to say I'm so glad in a way that I came, and I came a little early. And I heard your president when he took over, and what he said is so true that we need to help ourselves. And the way you said our doctors are going through so much, I think the whole world, and you said that the whole world is going into a terrible transition, and the need, I think there must be, psychiatrists must be multiplied. Decrease your fees, but multiply yourselves to reach as many people. We need psychiatrists and counselors. It's a very tough world today. And between the two of you all, half my talk is covered actually. So I think Dr. Dave Googled me or he listened to me somewhere. Everything. He makes such a good, see how much trouble he has taken to, I said, how does he know about my dad and what I did? And also, he's taken a lot of trouble. But in any case, whatever he said, and some right and some not so right, but then I'll make the correction. But let me start my talk. So I'm going to talk about what lessons I've learned in life, and there are many, and I said learning lessons because you never stop learning. I'm very young at the moment, just 83, but a lot of time to learn still in my life. So, so the first thing is follow your dreams, but don't make dreams your master. And these are the first two lessons I learned. And like Dr. Dave said that, what were my dreams from childhood? I think as the moment I was born, I remember, like he said, little butterflies, snails, dogs. I loved all these that hurt, I had to treat. So somewhere in my life, I think I didn't know I wanted to be a doctor at that age, but it was at the back of my mind. And coming from a family, I said I was the seventh professor of English. All 6 siblings took arts. And my father thought I would take English literature because I'm a voracious reader. I love books even now. And he was so disappointed. He looked down on science. He was one of Professor English, music, art, poetry, philosophy. Those were the subjects to take in his life. So when I said, I'm taking science, his heart sunk, but he said, okay. And then I took medicine. But when I decided to do medicine, my mother got a heart attack. You're looking so thin. Where will you eat? Staying in a hostel, what will happen? She was dead against me doing medicine. But I said, I wanted to follow my dream. And I did. And if I didn't do medicine, what would I be doing now? I think the best thing I did in my life. But the second thing I want to tell you, and everybody who's here, don't make dreams your master. Sometimes you have fixed ideas in your head. When I was in this Hubli Medical College, all the patients came from the villages. They were so poor, miserable. And I thought to myself, I want to work in the villages. And at that time, who worked? I couldn't go by myself. Today is a different world. You can start an NGO, do anything in villages. So, nuns, you have nuns, the sisters who wear those habits. They worked in the villages, so I said, I'll become a nun. And when I finished medicine, I told my mother, I'm becoming a nun. I want to work in the villages. And the wisdom of my mother, she didn't say no this time, knowing that I won't change my mind. She said, why don't you? But before you work with them for 1 year. So there was a dispensary they ran in Harvard, where I belong. And there I worked with them for 1 year. At the end of 1 year, I said, oh my God, I can never become a nun because I didn't like what they did, how they did it, and the democracy, the freedom to do what you want was lacking. So I decided, and if that's why I left that and I decided to do pediatrics because I had a child come to the dispensary who had dysentery with blood, and that child went home, and next morning I was told he was dead, and I said, have I missed interception? I said, I don't know enough pediatrics, have to do pediatrics. And hadn't I stopped that dream at that time and come to Bombay, I would have never met my most wonderful husband. So many of you all have spoken about him today. So I was fortunate. I came to Mumbai. I met my husband, the most wonderful human being, and then I could follow the career I did. So this is the first lesson that I have learned. Second is face the truth, turn it into an opportunity. And this is the second very important, and it's a lesson especially to the younger generation. I see mostly older people. Youngers must be out there somewhere. But in any case, I said, when I was in Sion Hospital, I was so fortunate to move into a Sion Hospital, the best institution in the world, especially after KM. So, yeah, I came to Sion. I had the lovely department there, Dr. Athavale as the head, and I want to read a paper. Srinagar was the conference, and I went there. I said, sir, I want to read a paper, but there was no time to do a prospective study. So he said, why don't you analyze some cases, and that analysis you can present. So at that time, pediatricians didn't look after all newborns. Gynecologists did, pediatricians. We had lots of babies coming to Sion Hospital, 10,000 to 15,000 deliveries, the poorest people coming, analyzed all the neonatal deaths for the last 10 years or more. And I went to Srinagar and I spoke there, showed all my slides, and this is what is happened to the babies and what is the mortality. Short of throwing, they didn't have eggs at that time or tomatoes. But they were shocked the way they looked at me and the murmuring and all. When I got down, Dr. S.M. Merchant, he was there at Awadia, he said, Armida, why are you presenting papers like this? I said, what's wrong? He said, you can't. People were laughing at you. And I came back and I told Dr. Athavale, sir, you saw my paper. Why did you allow? I was the laughing stock of that whole conference. And he asked me one question, is that the truth? And I said, absolutely the truth. I just looked at copied the data. No, nothing, no. We didn't have any of these wonderful facilities we have now, but copied it all, analyzed. I said, it's the truth. Then he turned around and said to me, why don't you do something about it? And you won't believe, in that split of a second, from a pediatrician, I became a neonatologist. I had no degree. There were no degrees at that time. No degree in neonatology. I had not read about neonatology. I didn't know a thing. But I had only one thing in my head. How can I bring down the deaths of that babies? And my day and night, it's not only there in the hospital, but even at home, what is happening? How can I bring down the deaths? And that's why that's how I became a neonatologist. So this was the second. And because I became a neonatologist, I think I could make a difference to myself and to so many babies in the world. The third is challenges are part of life. And what do you do about it? Work at it, believe in yourself, and think out of the box. So here I was in Sion Hospital. I don't want to tell you the mortality rates because they are embarrassing. High mortality rates. And Sion Hospital, 5 decades, little more than 5 decades ago. What was there in Sion Hospital? First of all, there was no space. Babies in a small ward like this were kept there. Secondly, there were no nurses. For all the babies, just one nurse. There was no department, no doctor, no residents, nothing. There was no money to buy anything. Everything the money is over. It's not like today's municipal corporation. There was no money at all in Sion Hospital. There was nothing. The only thing there was in Sion Hospital, plenty of babies, 10 to 15,000 babies brought to Sion Hospital and sick babies brought there. So this would be, what would we say, these are challenges. So what can one do about it? And that's what, there's no challenge you can't overcome, somehow or the other. I'll tell you simple things. We pushed all the babies there. I saw the wash basin was outside the unit. So I shifted one of the cradles and put the wash basin inside so that the doctors and nurses could wash their hands. What was the cause of mortality? The highest cause, like you said, was infection. I said, what is the cause of infection? I will tackle it. So I said, first, washing hands. The second thing is cause of infection is there are no nurses. And I thought, we couldn't get nurses. Even today it's difficult to get. But that time, nothing at all. So I said, how can I get nurses? Then I thought to myself, who's the best nurse? The mother is the best nurse. So I took out that board, no entry, I took it and threw it out. And I said, every mother will come into a unit. And the difference, because mothers, the nurses prick, poke, suck, they want to finish this, go here. They don't care, they don't feel. But a mother comes to the unit, she takes the baby, she holds the baby, she feeds the baby. She's telling the baby, I want you to live. So what better nurse could you have? And that's what I used to tell everybody, even at conference, oh, you don't have nurses? I have got one nurse to one baby, and the best nurses ever. That's the second. Third is the cause of infection was, put the baby in the incubator, 24 hours infection, 48 hours sepsis, 72 hours dead, sometimes even in a shorter period. I said, something's wrong with the incubator. Temperature is normal. Then I took cultures, Klebsiella, Pseudomonas. I said, oh my God. And those incubators were prehistoric, given by UNICEF. Some humidifier, water, difficult to clean, no nurses to clean, no ward boy that would listen. I said, I have to get rid of it. So get rid of it, then what? So then what is, there's no money to buy incubators. So it's a small unit like this. Humidity is ideal for preterm. So I put heaters. Those heaters cost me 50 rupees each. 2 heaters, it warmed up the room. Bigger babies were okay. Smaller babies weren't okay. What else? For 15 rupees, we were getting these lamps to put over babies. I put these small lamps. And of course, thank God it's a medical college. Every time I tried something new, one poor postgraduate student was given a thesis on that. So if you ask all our postgraduates, they were always wondering, what thesis are you giving? Today, of course, they're doing biochemical, God knows what they're doing. But my thesis, all my students did this. What height to keep, what wattage of the bulb to keep. So that is, we use oil to keep the babies warm. And they stayed warm. And they survived. And the next cause of deaths were, they got diarrhea, they got sepsis and died. So I said, what are we feeding? Glucose water in the labor room stopped. Then in the wards, we were giving formula, we were giving animal milk, we were using bottles, threw them all out. And I said, we'll use only human milk. And therefore, long before UNICEF, WHO decided, Sion Hospital was using exclusive breast milk for all babies. And you know what happens? Not only, but there was a problem. You express milk, you put it in the fridge. In the night, they express more, they breastfeed, but sometimes milk was not enough. Secondly, we were keeping in the fridge. And then, I broke my head, what shall I do, what shall I do? Like I said, and I used to, the term we used in those days, break your heads, try and get an idea. Today, they use a lovely terminology, innovations. So I'm feeling better now that the term has changed to innovation. So that time, I said, I'd seen a human milk bank in Oxford. I said, we'll start one here. And that's how, I can write a book on how difficult it is to start a human milk bank in '89, but it was started because I had the support of the head of the department who said, go ahead, I'm with you. And that's what Sion Hospital, the support of the doctor who says, you go and try, I am with you, and that's how I started that. So I think for every problem, work at it, persevere, believe in yourself and get other people to believe also. Huh? Sometimes heads of the department. So all those seniors here, when your youngsters have ideas, don't say, don't talk rubbish, go and refer to the book and get evidence-based medicine. You don't need evidence-based medicine. So you believe in yourself and think out of the box, what we call today innovations. The other is success lies in sharing learnings. And I think that's so important. And I think all my life I did small little things. I was so happy that the whole world had to know, not on the stage like this. So when the mortality of babies dropped at Sion Hospital with small little non-expensive things, I said all the babies to Sion came from peripheral hospitals, from the maternity homes. So I said I must teach all of them hand washing, breastfeeding, how to keep babies clean, get mothers involved. So I asked the DMC permission, sir, can I teach in all the hospitals? So municipality, I don't know, now it might be more difficult. That time he said, do you need money? I said, no money at all. He said, just go and teach wherever you want. So I think my department had a most wonderful department. We were one family. Jayashree Monkar, Ruchi Nanavati, Vasundhara Kanbur, all of us taking that time no projectors, projector, TikTok projector, slides, going by train from hospital to hospital, where we taught first, with neonatal care, then we taught breastfeeding. But I want to tell you, once we started doing this and teaching, then UNICEF got interested. They came to Sion Hospital and said, oh, you're doing such a good, can you all take the baby-friendly hospital initiative? And because of that, we trained all the doctors. I had an infant feeding project where doctors and hospitals all in Mumbai was covered. They were all taught, not only pediatricians, neonatologists, gynecologists, everybody. Then we went to Maharashtra. Like there is a GR on palliative care, there is a GR on breastfeeding and baby-friendly at that time. So if you start and do, you can take it to scale. And therefore, one must never stop. The next lesson I learned is reach beyond your boundaries. Growth begins when you move out of your comfort zone. So here I was, there are so many years in Sion Hospital, mortality dropped down, then we got space, we got a big neonatal unit, then we had warmers and things were changing and I was feeling so good. And then I realized that babies that we sent home, 900 grammer, we kept for 1 month, went home and they were brought dead. And some mothers, the other thing that we couldn't tackle is asphyxia. Mothers came in very late. So when they came, either baby was stillborn or severe asphyxia, so either they died or they had brain damage. Then I thought to myself, what am I doing here in Sion Hospital? If you really want to lower neonatal mortality, you can't sit in this, Sion Hospital alone. If you want, you have to go out of Sion where these mothers live. Talk to them, change their behavior to go for antenatal care, go for regular checkup, come in time to hospital. How to look after your baby at home. And that's when I said we must be in the homes of the mothers, community of the mothers, and that's where I started SNEHA, the Society of Nutrition, Education, Health Action. I want to tell you also, at that time, just before that, at one of the perinatal mortality meetings, a 6-week baby was raped and brought. 6 weeks. And before we knew, the mother was discharged. And at that time, I said, oh my God, what can I do about it? And therefore, when I started SNEHA, I said, not only looking after baby, mother, we must work. I promised God that when I live, I will do something about it. So we started violence against women. And therefore, I think it's a lesson for everybody. You keep on practicing, you do the same thing. How much can you practice? How much can you earn? If you want to do something exciting and all, you need to move out of the zone that you are at the moment so you can make a difference, I think, to the world. When things don't work, listen, modify, and change. And this is a lesson that I've learned also all my life, and everybody. We're so used, we get fixed ideas, we have to do it this way, and there is no other way. For example, I'll give you the example, back to the human milk bank. Human milk bank, which they have abroad, they had mothers who collected milk at home. Then they put it in their freezer, brought it to the hospital. And in the hospital, they had, they collected it in Pyrex bottles. And in the hospital, they had, how to make a pasteurizer to pasteurize milk. Now, in the hospital, our mothers, where are the freezers in our slums? There's no question of collecting at home freezers and all that. Then Pyrex is so expensive, we can't at all. So then, and where is the pasteurizer? So I had to modify it. I said, we will not do home collection, we'll do it only in the hospital where we supervise. And we know Pyrex will break and we won't be able to replace it. So what is the best thing in India? Stainless steel dabbas, every mother has it. And it is so easy to clean, it doesn't break. And third is, instead of pasteurizer, found out you can have a shaker water bath. So you need to modify and change if you want to succeed. The second thing I want to tell you, like in Sneha, we are working with communities, we are doing so much work, but then sometimes, we are working with mothers, we started with the newborn. Then we said if newborn is healthy, mother has to be healthy. So healthy mother means the adolescent has to be healthy. Adolescent healthy, the girl child. So starting with the mother, we now do a life cycle. So if you have to change if you want to succeed. The third thing I want to tell you, see, when I went into the slums, once you're a professor, people here are listening and all that. As a teacher, people are listening. Slums, no one wants to listen to you. You can't go there and say, I want to, who's bothered? So the whole methodology is different. You have to bring about change. So behavior change is different. You have to sit on the floor. You sit in their hut, admire whatever they have in the house. I have the little, they bring one Pepsi and divide into 10 little things and say, please drink something. And you have to, wherever you are, and then be one of them and listen to them first. And then depending on that, bring about change. And, when we talk about women, this is a very important thing. We have women's groups, women. How can women alone do it? For violence, for example, women's groups for violence, who's beating them up? The men. So, therefore we have women's groups, now we have men's group, we have youth group. So you have to get the whole community. So therefore you can't do the things the same way. Listen to people, find out what is happening, modify the methodology and change when needed. You can't do it alone. Partnerships bring synergy, and that is so true. If you say all this, I've said it, he said for my award, well, how could I ever get any recognition? Whatever I have, can't do it alone. I had a wonderful department. It was not a department, neonatologist was my family. And the pediatric department was so wonderful. Which person believes in you, gives you the space. So you have to have, everybody working with you. But in the work we do, who are our partners? If we want to bring change, that change should last. How can Sneha and NGO continue. I can't continue in the Ravi forever. We have to move somewhere else, or sometimes we have to give up. And who are your partners? Our partners are one, the municipal corporation. Wherever we work, BMC is our first partner. We work through all BMC hospitals. We work on maternal newborn health. We work violence OPDs in all municipal hospitals. Palliative care that I now do all municipal hospitals. So it continues. Our next partner is ICDS for nutrition. For violence, our partners are police. We've done protocols with 1,000 policemen, and we have trained police. And the community is our partner. Do you know in the slums of Mumbai, 7,000 women are our volunteers. So if you want to do something, and you have to work with partnerships, you can't do it alone. Our sufferings are part of life, and often pain is the bedrock of growth. And I want to tell you a little change in what you said, that when my daughter, after 5 years, my daughter Ramla was born, and she had 3 exchange transfusions after birth. Now, 50 years ago, exchange transfusions, survival rate was 50%. And therefore, every night when she was taken for an exchange, first of all, you're fasting, and they do it through the umbilical cord. I could hear her cries. And every time she went, I said, will she come back alive or not? And fortunately, after 3 exchanges, she survived. But that suffering made me a different pediatrician, neonatologist altogether. For the first time, I realized that suffering of that child, because if it's your child, you know what the suffering is. I also realized the suffering of a woman whose child might die in a neonatal intensive care unit. Every mother who comes and looks at a child who's dying or suffering, she says, will my child live? And I think that suffering made me a different doctor. They say, doctors taste the medicine before you give medicine. And I think God put me through that suffering to know what it is to have a serious child who might die. The second is, I lost my daughter in her 30s. She had cancer when she was 15, Hodgkin's, and then she got cancer breast, and finally I lost her. And the suffering, mine and my husband's, of course, he never recovered. But, the suffering we went through watching her suffer. And finally, she passed away. So after she passed away, I thought to myself, why is this so much? What is it I can do to make a difference? And for the first time, believe me, being in the medical college, I didn't know there was something like palliative care. I knew about Shanti Avedana for terminal cancer patients who wanted to go. But I didn't know there was palliative care. There was a degree at Tata's. And I said, you can relieve suffering. You can relieve the physical suffering, emotional suffering. You need counselors to help people with their emotional suffering. You can't just leave it like that. And you have social suffering. Our patients in the slums, where can we have no food to eat, where we give medicine? Where will people with strokes and paraplegics go to toilets? They need diapers. There's so much social, and lastly, spiritual suffering. And therefore, for the last 8 years, I've started under Sneha Ramla Palliative Care that reaches out to prevent suffering. And we, again, like I said, in 2 medical colleges, but we do home visits. Doctor, nurse, counselor. Joita's here. They are the ones who started MD palliative care, but I think it makes a huge difference in life. And I said, I went through that suffering for a purpose, and I learned so much from it and could do something about it. Other thing is gratitude and love. You talked about it in a little different way, but I think the most important thing in life is to be grateful for what you have every day. I'm grateful for the wonderful parents and family I had. Most grateful for the husband I had. I always tell people, and I must tell you, all the men here especially, there don't be so many men actually, more women. But I want to tell you, my husband, normally Indian housewives, you have to cook, clean, keep the house nice, feed your husband. You're the best housewife. I hate food and I don't like to see the kitchen. So I hardly ever cooked in my life. But my husband didn't stop every day, especially when he was ill and at the end of his life, to thank me and tell me he loved me, to kiss my hand every time I passed him. And that is gratitude and love. How often do we stop to thank people? How often do we stop to our own children, to our own family members, to our friends and all? So I think it is so important for people to hear that. Our children have to hear that they are being loved. And I think that is so, so important in life. I also feel, I don't know how many of you all, the modern generation, are believers, but I'm a huge believer. And I think God has brought us here for a purpose. And besides everybody else, like I said, partnerships, I think we don't work. Whatever we do, whatever we achieve, it's not our own achievement. God works through all of us. He can't come down. He can't come down from heaven and do anything. So He chooses you, me, everybody to work through us. And I think that's why morning, get up and say, thank you, Lord. Night time, you say, thank you, Lord. You don't know whether you'll live through the night. I don't know if I will live till I go home, but you never know. Therefore, it is so important not only to love, but to say that you love and are grateful. And finally, life is short. You just said that Dr. Shah said his colleague dropped dead at a young age. So we don't know when, where, how, and why. But life is very short. I think you must make the most of it. And I think whatever you love to do, don't think some people love to cook, some people love to write, some people love to travel, whatever. My daughter taught me that when she was advanced cancer, mets in all her bones, she had high diabetes on insulin, she had hypertension. She said, Mommy, let's go for a holiday. I mean, I've taken her for enough, but in that state, I said, where do you want to go? Turkey? And Egypt, I almost died. I was getting a heart attack. I said, I don't know whether I'll live through it. She said, no, don't worry. And we went, and she had a whale of a time, and I'm so glad I took her because she knew how to live life. Everybody felt sorry for her, so much suffering. She loved to spend, she ate well. She used to say, she used to take her insulin and eat mangoes, But she made the most of life, and therefore life is short. Of course, whatever you love to do, you need to do. I love to travel, so my husband and I travel all over. I love, as you can see from my slides, I love nature. So you talk sunsets and sunrises and birds and flowers and animals, of course, I love. And therefore, this morning, I must tell you, at 6 in the morning, I got up and I walked towards the Taj Fort, there's a lovely garden. And, when I looked at there were bougainvilleas spreading, looking so magenta all over. And then while coming back, laburnum trees with yellow flowers. And there were, the other flowers, some yellow flowers that I didn't recognize, a canna somewhere. And I said, what a beautiful world. Now I'm in a position to talk to psychiatrists this morning.